you're not going to get the same benefit as someone else who, you know, surprise, surprise,
it's no different than that person you see in the gym that, you know, is back squatting. You can tell before they pick the bar to the rack, they're going to fail their rep because they're like going into it ho-hum. They're not, you know, not fired up about the workout, maybe the back squat. They don't
spaghetti
like
body.
Yeah, they just go into it like limp noodle and they're like, fuck, I can't squat 315. It's like, yeah, because you like fell asleep before you tried to pick the bar up.
Fucking
like,
al dente over there.
You need to get yourself turgid.
Good morning, Misfits. You are tuning into another episode of the Misfit Podcast. Full goon squad in the house. Ted making sure that Sherb is not on camera too often. Shame. If you're watching on YouTube. You guys are going to have to carry, we were already talking about this, you guys are going to have to carry this episode. Ooh. I don't know how, other than the fact that I'm old and washed up, that I fucked my back up again, but I did.
Tell us how.
Well, I mean, I do my heart rate work on the ski erg at least once a week, which we'll talk about in this podcast. But I got done yesterday, felt completely normal, other than if you've done your heart rate work on the ski erg, the world around you afterwards is so confusing. Like you look up at the sky and you feel like you're going to fall through the ground. Like just that up and down, like you get it, like you do the air runner and then the ground moves for like the next 30 minutes. Yeah. Yesterday I walked out and I was talking to you when you were on the bike and I looked up at the sky and I felt like I was going to fall through the tar. I was like, whoa.
Next movement was supposed to be just head to the ground.
Yes. Nice and easy. And the reason we brought this up is because Sherb tried to hide the grip tester. That's not going to happen, but I actually think he might win today. I am unwell
between you two, to be clear.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Come on. Let's not get carried away.
It's been a while.
It hasn't been a while. Obviously I brought the grip test in when you weren't here. So I took the dub.
Someone's the current reigning champion in the new studio.
Yeah, it's me. Yeah.
Got it.
And I actually, to be honest, was scared because I was talking shit again. And the last time I talked shit, I lost, but I think I pulled a PR.
Nice.
Yep.
Fuck. We forgot to do it with Kenzie.
It's true.
64.8.
64.8, kid. Today is going to be literally 64.8. No one prior.
0.64.
That's my PR.
Sure, fire it up. Let's go. Where'd you hide it? Oh, it's just right there.
Stupid thing.
He's been trying to calibrate it over there with his eyes. Just trying to enhance.
Keep your elbow off that chair. I swear to God.
Just cracked
158
all knuckles. 154.8. I think I'm next because you're the reigning champ.
I'm the champion.
154.8.
Did you hear all my knuckles crack?
That's not atrocious.
Like 15 cracks.
That's not atrocious. We've set the standard.
Congratulations. Everyone's knuckles are breaking.
Oh, you got a shot.
What are we at?
165.4.
I couldn't stand up all the way right now. So maybe I can.
That's the rules. I'm sorry. You gotta stand at the play.
You
gotta stand at the play.
You gotta pull a 130
I can stand up, but if I need a zero angle here, it's not gonna happen. Oh my goodness. All right. Anything's possible.
You're what? 64?
65.8.
How angry am I that my back feels like this again?
Let's find out. Podcast.
It turned off.
Zero. I don't lose this week. Yes. That's his best effort. He needs like 15 minutes of recovery now.
This is why you should watch on YouTube, because if you're listening right now, you're like, what the fuck?
Yeah. Boring podcast.
Never you see any of the facial expressions. Here we go again.
How many?
Is that enough recovery time?
What'd you get?
154.8.
155 too. Suspect. I mean, I guarantee that last one was a 166. What are we gonna do? It felt like a 166 effort.
Daddy's home.
Before we get into the episode, we are, especially if you're already on YouTube, like the content right now. Hat tip to Ted's been in the cave. Ted has been in the cave. Editing now for a month and a half,
4 to 6 years straight.
Like how long since you started Granite Games episode 1?
I think I've probably got total time like 45 hours of editing.
Just a measly 2 straight days on the computer editing.
Yeah. So if you didn't hear that, Ted said 45 hours, like actual hours of editing. So
One straight work week.
The three of us here on the microphones and everyone listening, you just get to reap the benefits of Ted doing that for 45 hours, and you get to fire it up and put it on the TV, computer, iPhone, whatever. There's really good stuff in there. The Granite Games, the final Granite Games episode, again, we've talked about it before, but the idea of trying to tell a very specific story. Caroline and I and the rest of the team, we showed up to go to the CrossFit Games. There was no like, oh, this is a Hail Mary or whatever. The work was put in. We showed up to go to the games. Yeah. And then for that to happen, and to happen in the fashion that it did with that final event, and then, you know, Sherb in his special outfit that we'll let you wait and see.
Should have worn it today.
Should have worn it today.
I got the pants. I don't have the top still.
That was solid content.
Yes. Right, yeah. It's solid content, both from like an entertainment standpoint, and then like it's got some meaningful punch to it. It can get a little dusty,
very dusty
in whatever room you're in. And then on top of that,
as soon as that got I think you posted it it was either in Slack or in a, whatever,
when it got posted internally.
Whatever. Yeah. I think Caroline and I both saw it at the same time, but separately, and watched it at the same time, but separately. And like, pretty shortly after we both finished it, unbeknownst to the other, she sent like the tear, the wide-eyed emoji, and I was just like, yep, same. Like, again,
yep.
Like, God damn it.
The sound on that was great, Ted. Like the announcer and everything. Was that from your camera?
Yeah, that's just like, that was just in camera sound.
Damn.
Yeah,
that worked out great.
A few times.
I was hoping.
Yeah,
that was cool.
So we've got that, and then interwoven into all of that is also, you know, sort of our little mock games training camp type weekend.
Yep.
With, you know, the Goon Squad plus 4 extremely high caliber athletes. And I think kind of a different feel, obviously, from the travel and the competition to going back into the gym and training and whatnot. But just, again, really, really good content. And that's not me being like, oh, I hope we make, you know, an extra 4 cents from YouTube or whatever.
Thanks, YouTube.
I wouldn't worry too much about that. I just
can't wait for that check to come in the mail.
we talk a lot about things on this podcast and in this room, and especially in the podcast sense, audio wise, theoretical. Right. So we get these like actual practical applications of, it's great when we get athletes in studio. I think that bridges the gap some, but then to have the practical application of, this is what it looks like when we are out there competing and coaching. This is what it looks like when they're in the gym training. And we're like, hey, I know you think you're competing right now, but you're not. Like, so let's figure out, you know, sort of all of these pieces. So,
and for the listener, it's like, this is what it looks like. This is what like we hope a lot of your training looks like day in and day out, whether it's the Hatchet program, whatever program you're following. This is kind of what we're thinking, what we're envisioning in our heads when we're seeing an athlete of that caliber executing. This is how we want it to be executed. So cool to watch the workout features, I guess, like the mock games week interwoven with like the workouts and events themselves that everybody had access to.
It's a very interesting time for us as programmers and coaches and all these different things. We are simultaneously getting athletes ready for the CrossFit Games. We're going to go coach at the CrossFit Games, and we're leading into potentially the most important part of our entire off season, which is phase 1 beginning and literally starting over from scratch. And I think there's an important designation in there for both athletes who are trying to figure out what they need for coaching, what they need for programming, and then coaches out there who are trying to figure out what these designations mean. I think the easiest way for me to put it into words is to say, you know, Sherb coaches X athlete. In a way, I program for them. Does that make me their coach? No. Like not even the slightest little bit. And I think that designation is important, not only for athletes to figure out and coaches to figure out, but for us to figure out and keep segmented and almost separate from each other, so that you don't get the idea as a professional that those things start to blend together. And it's like, well, I mean, words on a page. Here you go. Good
Programmer
luck.
and a coach are different things.
Yes,
you know,
they're
anybody can
very
write.
different.
Anyone can write a workout on paper, tell you to go do it, but they don't talk about how you're looking to do it, what you're looking to gain from it. I mean, you're just literally anyone can write a workout. I always joke with like brand new people, like any jerk can make a hard workout, but someone who's going to make you fit and has your best interest in mind and talks to you about that and gives you the blueprint on where you are to where you want to go. That's a coach. That's the conversations you have. And I think that's the biggest separator for people who are looking to become coaches, whether that's at the affiliate level or coach a high level athlete. I mean, anybody can decide that, 15, 12, 9 of two different movements is terrible if they're at the right dose, but how you execute what you're trying to gain from it is what matters, and what makes you a coach. And then the conversations you have surrounding what happened to that person or how it went or how it was going to go the next time something like comes up, that's what a coach is. That's the difference between the programmer and then the coach.
You can kind of see that playing out too, specifically just because we were talking about it during the mock games week stuff, because they're like, athletes are asking like, hey, how do I attack this? And we're the ones who wrote the workouts, but the answer is like, well, I don't know. Like it's different, and it's going to be different for different athletes. And it's like it's not like if we can't say, hey, this is how we're thinking it's going to get executed, especially during a test. It's like, it's hugely dependent on the athlete. So yeah, we're writing workouts that we think that are that have a specific purpose, but it's going to be different for every athlete. And as a coach, like we were saying, you don't, just because you can write a good workout or write a workout doesn't mean that, your job is done. Like it's not at all done. Like we're just like, oh,
yeah.
fuck, I can't
it's
believe
actually
we wrote
easier
that.
for
I don't know how you're gonna
me
attack that.
to think about it as a separate job.
Yes.
Like if someone's like, oh, well, you're done coaching. You wrote phase 1. It's like,
nah.
those things don't have anything to do with each other.
It's kind of fun because I think you talked about, or you commented on it or reposted it was like the assault bike power snatch workout. And it was like, we write these so far in advance that when they come back up, it like
that's
brings
so fun.
joy to my heart. And I was just like, we have the same, I mean, it happens with Misfit Athletics, but also at the affiliate level, because we take affiliate class more often than we, do an MFT training piece.
Oh, so you guys are taking it a step further by executing.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So
Taking
it's
our
like,
medicine.
yeah, it's like, fuck, like we wrote this thing like 2 months ago and I knew it was, and I was like, I didn't care because I was like, yeah, I'm going to make this fucking terrible. And so I make it terrible, and then it comes back around and I'm like,
then he gets a mysterious injury that allows me to work out by myself.
And then and it comes back and you're just like,
Stages an injury.
I remember I made this terrible. And then now I need to, now I need to confirm that it was terrible. And it's like, oh, I don't know I wrote this and I executed it wrong or didn't know how to execute
One important point that I thought you brought up in talking about the content that we've been releasing recently is the coaching angle and being able to see what a coach is actually like. So if you're someone out there wondering like what a coach should be like and how those conversations should go and what you should be talking about, if you watch any of those days of the mock games when Kenzie and Caroline are up here and they hear the conversations you two are having there because you were primarily the ones working with them that weekend, like those conversations are what coaching's about. And if you want to go back and kind of see what it's about, like you didn't just talk about, all right, you're going to like lift that sandbag and then put that sandbag there. It was, hey, you need to think about this pace on your run. Or, hey, I thought you guys would be closer to 2.5 minute 400s instead of 3 minute 400s. What do you learn from that situation? Could you have carried the bag differently? Could you have broken up your muscle ups more? That's the kind of conversation we want athletes to be thinking about with their coach or working with a coach on those aims. And if you don't have someone like that can be training partners. But like, I think the mock game stuff is a perfect example of like what our remote coaching is all about. When you work with a Misfit Athletics coach, that's the kind of conversation you're going to have with them. Not how much is 70% of 405 deadlift. Like, grab a calculator.
Don't bring up remote coaching. We got a 4,000 person wait list.
Jesus.
Trying to build it.
You can still apply.
Stack it higher.
We are just like that. That is a joke there, but we are working on bolstering our coaching staff. But if you heard the way that we argue about not even a workout, but how many reps in a single round of a workout, you understand why, how seriously we might take bringing on.
How long did we argue about Sherb's bitchwork piece yesterday or on Friday? That was at least 20 or 30 minutes. It was a 1 week. We had to meet about 1 week, and it took us like 2 hours to go
Second
through
day
a
of the
week.
phase.
Right. And it also, the argument wasn't that it was a good piece. It was that it wasn't the right piece for that day within the designation that was there. So that's actually, what a segue.
Yeah.
What a segue that is.
Seg you?
Yeah. Okay. That word, look up how you spell it.
Yeah.
It's messed up. You can't even find it on the internet how to spell it.
You can't even spell it correctly enough for Google.
You can't Google Segue.
Segway. SEGWAY.
Yeah, turns out that's just the thing that dude from New Hampshire invented.
That's the thing that the mall
that's
cops
Paul
are.
Blart's
Mall cop.
mode of transportation. Something that we have decided to hammer home phases 1 through 4, which will take us from August to, I actually know the answer to this, February 20th, I believe, or 19th.
Second, I think.
No. But when the
That's
phase
week
ends,
of-
that's Saturday
Probably
prior.
19th.
So it would be the
23,
20th, I think.
19th.
19th.
February 19th. August 9th to February 19th. We are going to, and we've obviously done this so much already, but we are going to push the idea that you need to do every single thing that you do in relation to trying to get better at this sport needs to be on purpose. We can't go through the motions. We cannot continue to have days, weeks, months where people just check off boxes. There's a level of maturity, I think, that comes with programming and coaching for as long as we have, and now what's happening to the sport and how amazing the bottom tier athletes are at like a semifinal. Like, it doesn't look like that in person.
Silly.
You get that, you get the front runners, you get those people out there, and you get your comparison.
You're like
and
making fun of like the men for snatching like 255.
Would have gone unbroken.
What an idiot.
Would have gone unbroken. Doritos on my
Pull
stomach.
the slack out of that bar. That's about all I can do.
So when we get to that point, it almost becomes pointless to continue to have those, well, so-and-so does this much volume, or so-and-so has this in their routine, so I need to add it to mine. If you're adding something to your routine, it's taking away mental and or physical resources, and it better be worth it. And it better be something that you're buying into, that you believe in. And the silly examples would be things like making sure that you have the right wrist wraps, shoes, whatever. Like, this is what people are using now. So-and-so said this. Well, it turns out so-and-so makes 6 figures to say that. And I'm not saying they don't believe it, but like, there's a piece to, taking a full step back and saying, okay, even the stuff that we say, even if we do a full podcast where we talk about the quote unquote 23 hours you're outside of the gym, obviously that math doesn't work out for competitors, but those those other hours, we are giving suggestions. And again, if you're just adding something in, but not really doing it right or going through the motions, I think it sets the wrong tone for basically everything else that you're doing. So, today's podcast episode is about the ideal training day, and we're going to use the rough outline of week 2, day 1 from phase 1, just to say, this is what a day would look like, so we can get into more specifics. But we are going to be general. We are going to talk about, okay, is this after a rest day? Is this after, 2 full training days in a row? There's different pieces to think about when you're going into all that. And probably the easiest place to start is morning movement. Morning movement is plain and simple meant to be, as soon as you get out of bed, can you spike your heart rate and then work through some range of motion that's going to set you up for the day. Sherb writes all of our morning movement stuff, and we've sort of learned over the years that if we don't write it down with a specific prescription, less people are going to do that. For me personally, I know that things like getting up and doing X number of burpees is going to get my heart rate there. And then, while I'm drinking my water or whatever, I'm in a squat hold, or I kick up into a handstand hold for a little bit and make sure that feels okay, depending on what I did the day before, what I'm going to do there. You have permission to personalize your morning movement, but the idea is you're setting yourself up to be able to sleep better by, snap your fingers, the adrenaline's going, cortisol starts, and then throughout the day you get back towards, rest and digest.
A lot of people too, they want to get to the gym and have themselves feel good when they start moving around through those things. You don't want to sit on an assault bike when you walk in the gym and feel like you need 20 minutes of movement before you, grease the groove and feel good enough to move around. So, we hear from a lot of athletes that they typically feel better on piece 2 or 3 out the day. So even though this is not a real training piece, you're not looking to get some sort of like, oh, I'm going to be better at running my 800s because I did this morning movement, because it's moving my body around. It's making sure you get blood pumping through your veins. It's making sure that, you worked through some squats, you worked through some lunges, you got yourself inverted a bit. And that just that type of stuff wakes up your central nervous system. So again, you can get a good night's sleep, but also it makes it so that when you walk in the gym, it doesn't take as long to get yourself loose and limber so you can get right into training. And, I've had good success here with athletes being like, for whatever reason, I feel like I can go to sleep a little bit easier since I started this. And, we had the teenagers start morning movement in Comp Block 2, and they just said, hey, I've noticed that I've slept a little better around training season, around the competition season. I said, good. I don't need you to know all the ins and outs of cortisol. I just need you to know that if you do something like this, you will sleep better and you will have better training. So that's a win there. And for a lot of people, again, it doesn't need to be complicated. No. We're not asking for a half-hour session. We're literally asking move your body around for 3 to 7 minutes and you're completely done.
Yeah, I was going to say, what's like the time? It's like people see morning movement. I don't have 20 minutes. It's literally 3 or 4, 3 to 5 minutes or 3 to 7 minutes, whatever it is. Or again, personalize it. There was a time, I kind of got off of the track of doing that a little bit, but for me, it was a minute on the assault bike. I have an assault bike, or it was 15 burpees and a minute.
The machine is the easiest if you have it accessible.
Yeah,
it's just sometimes the burpees are just really. Yeah. This morning, if I had gotten up, I can't really bend over or stand all the way up. So the idea of doing that, but if I can sit on an assault bike, if I can sit on a C2 bike, rower, whatever it is, if I can do that, that's a no brainer. It's too easy. Yeah. It's way too easy. So again, someone wakes up in the morning, we're looking for that. I personally like to call it giving your insides a bath. Go down and get some hydration going
for different people.
Yes.
Fuck.
Give your insides a bath. A lot of things are happening overnight. And being dehydrated is one of them, especially with all of the people that have sleep apnea and deviated septum or whatever. If you're the type of person that sleeps and needs 6 gallons of water throughout the night, there's a pretty good chance you're a mouth breather. And when you're a mouth breather, the amount of moisture that you send out with every breath is pretty staggering. It's why you wake up and feel like someone put socks in your mouth.
I hate when that happens.
Also different.
No, I mean, I also the sleeping environment could be a big deal there too. If you don't have the ability to make your room cool, you're going to sweat more. You're going to lose hydration that way. And
sure.
For a lot of people, I think it's a really easy thing to get up and do, but you set yourself up for a better day if you can just get up and have a glass of water before you walk over to your coffee maker with your eyes closed and try to drink 6 cups first thing in the morning. And
don't worry. Don't worry. We're going there.
Oh, I haven't got there yet. All right. Sorry. I'm jumping ahead.
We're going there. So we've got our morning movement. We've got our water. You can do water with electrolytes. You can do water with pink salt, whatever you got to do.
Shouldn't taste salty.
It shouldn't be gross. If it's gross, you put too much salt in it.
Lemon juice was my go-to. I squeeze some lemon and a little piece of ginger.
Oh, geez. So fancy. My goodness.
Quick question though. If you are a faster, would that knock you out of your fast?
No.
All right, just checking.
I think so.
No. You asking for a friend or
asking for a friend on me?
No, it's fine. I just don't do that.
So we've gotten there and we've talked about it on a million different podcasts. We won't spend much time on it, but if you are relying on cortisol, if you've gotten up and done your morning movement and done your water, the salt, the reason why we're doing that again is to fire up the adrenals a little bit. If you are relying on that, you cannot also rely on caffeine. And Michael Pollan's got a new book that's either out or coming out. And he talks quite a bit about caffeine sort of as a drug. And for most people, that first cup is to essentially fight off, what's the word I'm thinking of? When you are addicted to something and then you withdraw. You're essentially closing that door.
Gotcha.
That's what the first cup of coffee does to someone who's addicted to caffeine. And I don't think I know anyone who's not addicted to caffeine.
Definitely guilty.
My wife actually might not be addicted to caffeine. She doesn't seem to care if we're traveling and we don't get a cup of coffee and I'm like,
what is happening right now?
I would be fine with
thinking the lava's going to take me over.
I don't mind decaf coffee.
It's got caffeine in it.
Sucker.
But to the main point, We want to feel awake if we want to use it. And I actually have always, called coffee nature's pre-workout, like a good ripping hot cup of coffee that's got, maybe a higher caffeine content than your Folgers K cup. That's a hell of a pre-workout. Like I know there's a lot of people that listen to this that are in, whatever their 5 a.m. or 6 a.m. class at their affiliate. It's not easy to eat before that. A lot of people have a challenge with it, not only because they don't want to eat the second they wake up, but also you're going to digest and go into class and, be okay.
Coffee does see in the morning too. Some people, it helps accelerate certain things you don't want to happen in the middle of your
Did you guys
class.
know that that's a thing in the running community? Runners don't run. It's like a community-wide thing. Runners don't run until they poop. They're like, it is a game changer not getting your bowel movement versus getting your bowel movement. If you're a morning runner, you always see those people, you drive to work, you see those crazy people at the crack of dawn. But like, that's a thing. Like they talk about how much different they feel pre and post. Like if they just take off down the road and haven't had it yet. So there's a lot of like
you think runners like pass each other on the road or just like, hey, did you do it? And he's just like, no.
That's why you're running past him.
Yeah.
I'm not insinuating that they shit themselves. I'm just saying that they're like, their pacing is better. They breathe better. They're much more comfortable when they do that. So,
unencumbered.
I'm always trying to find tricks to make me run faster. They haven't worked yet.
Shoes. You haven't tried that?
No, I did, but Nike sent me women's shoes and other Hunters.
It looks great on Hunter,
I
though.
need those. Holes in my Reeboks.
So we're waiting. If we can, we are waiting to be able to do that. Next up is the conversation of fasted cardio. This is a big topic. People want a lot of information, but I think if we go quickly through it, we can sort of leave it at what it is instead of overcomplicating things. If you eat in the morning, if you're a morning eater because you are a games level athlete and you need to eat over the course of the entire day to get as much in as you can, if you do the circadian fasting, if you don't do time restricted eating, the idea that you should skip your heart rate session because you're not fasted we are not on the same page.
No.
Do we want to manipulate energy systems at least somewhat regularly? Yes. Is that something that we're looking for someone to be able to do? Yes. Because you go to compete, you don't want to eat. Are you going to be able, is your body going to have the machinery to be able to pull fatty acids from adipose tissue? Things of that nature. So really important to just put out there, yes, we call it fasted cardio, but yes, it is very much okay. And again, just makes me angry thinking about someone skipping it because like I had a snack or I had lemon or ginger in my water.
True.
Good enough. Good enough for me. Yeah,
I thought you could do one or the other. You could do water with ginger or fasted cardio. Oh.
So on this hypothetical day that will actually exist on August 16th, your fasted cardio that you would be doing based on the weekly work from Misfit Athletics is 8 rounds, 400 meter run at a forever pace, 1 to 2 legless rope climbs. I want to bring this up, and I actually went specific with that one because we are looking for adherence. So we've already broken down that, okay, we get it. If you're not fasted, it's okay. We still want you to get this work in. And then we have decided for adherence purposes that, we're tracing all the way back to maybe 2014 when we had the heart rate work starting to come up, and I was buying all of our all of our remote clients the Polar heart rate watch. So Ted's got the technology pumping here. So if you're watching on YouTube, we actually have it up on the screen. And we have the translation on there, and this is as simple as it gets. If you want to start doing the heart rate work, if you're excited, you see our, games level athletes doing this stuff. It is much more specific, but if it's too boring for you, if you look at it and you say, I'm not going to do this more than this one time or whatever, we want you to go right back to the 8 rounds of 400 meter run with the 1 to 2 legless rope climbs. We're giving you basically the exact same prescription, but we're saying take a little mental break. Come in, be dynamic, do the things that you're good at. You're used to CrossFit, you're used to going hard, and then get back out there for another 400 at a nice slow pace because we're actually trying to make something happen. If you have the bug right now. If you want to get into that, there's actually a reason why it does not say zone 2 training on there. There is way too much information out there about what zone 2 is, what zone 3 is. It's all different. It's different for multiple reasons. You have your standard method of everyone has the same resting heart rate, the same max heart rate, and we're just going to go based on percentages. That's when people go, well, according to this, my zone 2 is like a 120 heart rate. It's like, no, that's not right. That's not what we're looking for. So we want to get away from semantics and just get down to exactly what we're looking for. In these sessions, you are looking to stay aerobic the entire time. You are looking to stay away from lactate threshold. So your legs start to burn and your heart rate starts to go up. Your arms start to burn. That is when we go into lactate. That is when we don't teach ourselves to flush that stuff out so continuously, so much that we don't feel it. So if you're doing this work and you're having this intense muscle fatigue, there's a pretty good chance that you're either just not used to it yet, or you're going a little bit too hard. Damper's not right. We got to get the correct setting on the bike, whatever it is.
General idea would just be consistency. If you can't feel you can be consistent for the entire session, you're probably going into that lactate threshold. If you have a burn and all of a sudden your RPMs go from 90 to 80, there's a good chance you probably pushed a little bit too hard, or your damper, you said
you should be able to do it based on feel.
Exactly.
We're not suggesting that you actually do it on feel, but like if you're listening to something, watching something, whatever, you get lost in the moment, you're doing the ski erg, or, your jam comes on, you should not go from your, whatever prescribed 150 to 175 like that and just be like, oh, I'm a CrossFitter. I'm used to my heart being in my throat at every second.
I do think that the zone 2, like kind of prescription as far as, like you can call it effort or rate of perceived exertion. It's like you can have you can speak in a couple sentences, but then you probably need to take a small breath.
Yeah.
It's certainly not like 1 or 2 words at a time, nor is it just like an entire, unencumbered conversation, but it's like, hey, I can, I can talk to you. If you walk by, I'll say a sentence and I need to take a breath, that sort of thing. That's the kind of effort you should be.
Yeah, it lives right between. You have a flush. If you are doing a flush, you should be able to have a conversation literally the entire time. A couple of pals on the C2 bike and you just ham it up the whole time. That is a flush speed. Then we have what we would consider our aerobic actual bitch work on the site. Ain't nobody talking to each other during that. No.
Yeah.
This zone, whatever we want to call it, what we're calling an aerobic heart rate session, is in the middle of those two things. Right. Again, you could, like, people will walk by and, how's your pace today? Whatever, you can get it out, but then you notice, my heart rate will go to like 148, 149. Alexis screaming at Sophie. Heart rate got up to 179. So on YouTube, you've already seen it. If you're listening, aerobic heart rate session, we are swapping. We're keeping the running. We're keeping the modality, and we're just going 45 to 60 minutes at 180 minus your age. To me, that is the easiest way to put this information out there and have people realize that is the target. Like if I'm on a machine where it's
the
really
upper end target, ceiling. To be clear,
not necessarily. It's so it's what it's meant to be is, and I don't want to make it seem like this is something we invented. This is the Maffetone method, something that's been around for a very long time. That is where you start. That is how you figure out the feeling and the area that you're supposed to be in. Conditioned athletes actually kick into lactate typically around 78% of their heart rate based on testing. The problem with this stuff, and I think we've talked about it on the podcast, or maybe the three of us have talked about it, but this, if you were going to measure this, you would need to buy a lactate reader on Amazon, get the sticks, prick yourself, and do that. That's the only way to know this. So these heart rate zones are there as most people are probably in this.
As an accessible guide.
Right.
Basically.
And a lot of people call this zone 3 training, and it's the exact same thing. So again, you can understand why we're trying to simplify this. We get a lot of DMs where it's like people are getting so specific and so like, well, my app says this or my app says that.
Their apps. Let's
start with 180 minus your age. That's a really good place to go. And for me, it really is just about spot on. When I'm at a 145 pace, I'm not bored.
145 heart rate.
145 heart rate. I'm not bored, but I am close to it. I think I'd be bored in the high 130s. But then when I get into the 150s, I can just feel that vasodilation a little bit more. I can start to feel that. So it actually is pretty close for me. I allow myself to, you know, if I'm going at the pace I normally go and I'm at like a 142, I don't really care that much. And I'm at a 148, I don't really care too much, but I really do try to keep my average at 145 the entire time. So I believe that is the simplest way for us to put that information out there for where how you should feel and how you should get started. This is not going to be every single day. The amount of hours that we give athletes depends on their goals, strengths and weaknesses, all of that stuff. If you did this once a week, especially for an entire phase, and then decided that you could comfortably add that second day, great.
I would say, like, for most athletes, one of these sessions a week is a great place to start. But obviously, you said the more your goals aspire to be the higher level competitor, you can think about 2, 3, 4 sessions of these, and maybe upwards of, you know, you talked about, I think you and I, 3 hours is like what they say is the dose to really move the needle if you're trying very specifically to get better at your aerobic base. Yep. But some is better than none. And for a lot of people, like,
and those other pieces that are those other people that are doing 3 to 4 hours, they have one goal.
Yes.
You're listening to this podcast, you got a lot of goals. And when in that context, gymnastics, weightlifting, CrossFit, this energy system, that energy system. So we don't overcorrect. We see that, you know, our games athletes are, you know, doing this type of thing upwards of 4.5 hours a week. Are we them? No. Are we conditioned in the way that they are? Do we recover the way that they do? Do we have the same goals that they do? All of that is super important.
All right, fit folks, just a quick break to talk about our show sponsors, which is basically ourselves, but you can help support us and, more importantly, our athletes by heading to sharpentheaxeco.com, using any one of their first names to give them a little bit of kickback when you purchase either their stuff or anything in the Sharpen the Axe store. Just drop the last water.
The last water? Misfit Summer Series.
The last water. The last Misfit Summer Series.
Gross.
Tank. It's a cool one. I like it.
It's the first one you wore.
Yeah, it was the first one that I got. I like the tank. I like the color. Sharpentheaxeco.com. Snatch that thing up real quick, and then use your favorite athlete code to give them a little bit of cash, or use the code word Kiala to save 10% on your order and give 10% to them. Sharpentheaxeco.com.
We also brought to you by Pure Spectrum CBD. You can head to purespectrumcbd.com and use the code word Misfit to save on all orders, not just your first. This last 2-week period's been really fun for us. We've had a lot of good athletes up here. We have a lot going on as we prepare ourselves for the CrossFit Games. And one of the things that we try to make sure that we do is get ahead with the programming, take our time, really sit down, focus, and think through things. One thing I'm not very good at is sitting still for a very long period of time. And one thing that really helps me with that is that black label tincture. You know, the ability to kind of help my body down regulate and be calm has been a really nice side effect of taking that tincture. So it's my favorite product they have. I also really like their salve. You know,
get those sore joints. Spoonfuls of salve into your coffee like it's fucking.
Oh, it's funny. I was back on my my old time hop there, and I saw how I used to make bulletproof coffee, and I wanted to puke when I saw it because I like stuck a stick of butter in a coffee cup. Not how you do that. But anyways, getting off the track here. Again, if you were looking for something to help you with your focus, help you with better mental clarity, that tincture is a really good way to go. You can head to Pure Spectrum CBD. Use the code word Misfit to save on all orders.
The most exciting time of the year for us as programmers is unveiling our plan for everybody that we've been working on for so long. August 9th, misfitathletics.com, phase 1 begins. We are spending an entire podcast, and then we will spend 4 entire phases trying to convince you to do absolutely everything that you're doing on purpose, not to go through the motions, to really get into it. If you are new to Misfit Athletics, if you've been taking some time off of volume, August 2nd is going to be our primer week for phase 1. We're just sort of going to tease phase 1 a little bit, have a little bit of a lower volume, and get people into the movement styles and the lifts and the conditioning that you're going to see for the next 7 weeks. MisfitAthletics.com or the SugarWOD marketplace. And as always, is the three of us. You listen to us talk all the time about our specific workouts, what we're working on, maybe sort of testing or whatever. That is teammisfit.com. So if you're an affiliate owner, you can head there to the SugarWOD marketplace and get signed up. If you are an affiliate member, go bug your coach if you want to be as fit as, I don't know, maybe like a hybrid version of Sherb and Hunter. Teammisfit.com, SugarWOD marketplace. All right, back to the show. I actually really like this. So the next thing that we are going to talk about is sort of your daily general warm up, but I do really love something like this for an actual warm up. You have all these like multiple level benefits of what's happening here. So let's say you are coming off of a rest day. There's something to breaking up the cobwebs that's there. If you're not coming off of a rest day and you're going into training, you're a little bit sore. We can maybe prioritize, we're flushing the lower half, upper half, whatever it is. Like there's a lot of benefits to this style of thing being the first thing that you do in a day.
And we talk about, whenever we have a training camp, like we're going to have a weightlifting session on Friday night. Your warm up is like an hour long and people are like, what the hell, dude? We thought we were lifting barbells. What the fuck? Like I do like one front squat, one jerk, and I'm ready to clean and jerk. Like, why are we doing all this? And it's because
we're not going through the motions.
You're not going through the motions. We're trying something very specific. And, I think everyone can relate to how they feel after they get one good training piece under their belt. Now, all we're doing that is extending the window and working on something very specific, but it's going to make sure that when you go to your barbell or you go to your first real high intensity conditioning piece, that you've gotten sweaty, you've broken a sweat, you've got your body ready for the endeavor that's about to, happen to you, which are those, anywhere between 1 and 5 training pieces, depending on where you are in your, fitness journey.
The only thing I'd say about using it as a warm up, and this is probably more a personal anecdote, but if I do 30 or 40 minutes on a C2 bike, for example, it's difficult for me to immediately go into a training piece and tell my legs to now move fast. Because if you're moving slow, you're developing the slow twitch muscle fibers, which is a huge portion of why we like the either fasted cardio or zone 2, the 180 minus your age heart rate work. For me personally, it's like, am I ready? Am I prime? Is my musculature ready to like move something powerfully and fast? And it might not be. So that's just more something
that's an important qualifying statement. So I don't mean this is actually your warm up.
Right.
It warms you up.
Yes.
It has that same vibe of, we've talked about competition day. What are we supposed to do? The sweat check.
Yep.
This helps in that way. But no, I totally agree. This is not a This is not a 5x5 back squat warm up.
Right.
You're not gonna. It's not going to feel right when you're going into that. So one of the things that I love about how our program is segmented and different people are responsible for different things is you have an athlete like Caroline who is so invested in not going through the motions. She's writing the warm-ups, and she's writing the warm-ups from the perspective of the athlete that has to go in and actually execute.
She's like, how am I going to warm up for this day?
Exactly.
Everybody else can figure.
So this day has heavy deadlifts. This day has wall ball ski, and this day has mandatory handstand walk skill work. Look at the screen. Like, do you feel like you are going through a general warm up where you're firing up the musculature to then say, okay, we're ready to go through this?
Yeah.
We've got good mornings. We've got an AMRAP with running, kettlebell swings, and wall walks. And again, these are things that we're not going through the motions, but you can also personalize this stuff. So you look at the day, you look at the session that's coming up next. What am I trying to get better at within the actual deadlift? Is my central nervous system the thing that really needs to be spiked, or I just need to make sure that, I can use my hamstrings and my glutes? It's going to be different for different people. But it's there as a general overall suggestion that you can go in and manipulate so that you aren't going through the motions. Because if you go into this would typically for a lot of athletes go before the deadlift. We've got the high CNS lift for phase 1 is the deadlift, and we're looking for a large emphasis to be put on that. And if you're like, oh wow, I'm deadlifting starts at your 1x6, something's wrong. Something is very wrong when it comes to that.
I actually really love one facet of this warm up too, is that single arm Russian kettlebell swing. one of the things you have to do in addition to getting your posterior chain ready to deadlift is your core. You have to be aware of what your midline is doing. And when you mix in something that's single arm that could potentially put you through some sort of rotational thing that you would not want to see in a deadlift, you have someone's midline focus here, and you have the opportunity for some skill transfer and some, low-key accessory, almost like work built into your warm-up. Some things that you wouldn't probably see traditionally in a Metcon, but you might see in accessory work. Has a lot of value, especially if you're someone who notices that like there are certain movements that really give you trouble. A lot of times you're not paying attention to these type of things where, hey, I need to do some more single arm stuff, or I need to do stuff that's, isometric on one side because I've noticed that this, that, or the other occurs when I'm cleaning or when I'm snatching or pulling a heavy single. So like, as much as I love the thick band of good mornings, don't be afraid to mix in some single arm and some unique things. And I think that, took one of your classes recently and you made us do double unders, then double unders, try to go backwards, then try to do triple unders. And it was just a fun way to get someone ready to do their training day, but it also mix in a little bit of skill work or some things that you may not find in your daily training that does have benefit and can prepare you for the day at hand.
I think you guys made a video on warming up for like a weightlifting session. And I think a lot of athletes are just like, it's funny because we didn't write warm-ups, then people were upset that we didn't write warm-ups, and then when we write warm-ups, people are just like, I don't need it, I can do my own warm-up. And it's like, well, your third set of back squats was your best one, so clearly you need help warming up. Otherwise we wouldn't be in this predicament. And it's like you've got the blood flow, you've got the the activation, and then kind of your specific like what movement patterns am I going through. So if you kind of keep at least those things in mind, I don't remember the exact things that you guys said, but keeping those things in mind, you like that is what you need to be doing. And that's kind of how we structure the warm-ups, or how Caroline structures them. And there's a few different like styles of warm-up that we write that we don't need to really get into here, but like keeping those things in mind, the blood flow, if it's a Metcon first, you got to get your heart rate up in some capacity, and then the activation and specific musculature that you're going to use needs to be firing.
So one of the important points with this day is that you'll see as you swipe through on the app or the website that you've got your mandatory work, and then you've got your pick 0 to 2 on there. You can use the concept of whether you get to pick anything based on whether you think you can make yourself warm up again. Like that's a really good rule. If you're starting to hit that wall of not having the mental resources to stay checked in the gym, and you're just like, here we go. And you like, you become, everything becomes a joke where you're like, no one warms up around here. Whatever.
I did my last piece. That was my warm up.
Exactly. I think that's a really good way for you to ask yourself whether it's worth it. Exactly. Are you going through the motions? So every single piece, maybe we don't need to be fully greased for a skill session. But think about blood flow, activation and range of motion. Super important going into a skill session. If you are working on something and your shoulders don't open up for your handstand walk, sort of like you talked about with the third set of back squats, it's a problem. It's not skill work. You warmed up for half of your skill work. Now you're getting skill work in, and you missed half of your session. So every single piece, lifting, conditioning, fasted cardio, any of these things, because if you're spending the first 20 minutes trying to get to the heart rate, that's also not a good thing when it comes to that. But you need to be fully greased to earn the right to do a piece.
Yep.
And you have to do that 3 or 4 times in a day if you're a competitor.
I think it becomes an issue mostly when people start to do multiple, I think, conditioning pieces in a day, a lot of times, because a lot of times the natural inclination for people is to go warm up, then we lift first, which I don't know if we want to talk about like the order of the mandatory pieces playing a role in how you execute that, but let's just assume that you're going to lift first. More often than not, that lift is a pretty solid warm up. We're going to, we deadlift, then we're going wall ball ski. We don't need a ton. Probably want to make sure we get some squatting in there, maybe get the heart rate up, but we don't need necessarily like this additional excessive warm up for 2 relatively low skill movements. Okay. You finish that piece and then you've got maybe something a little bit more complex, or you do want to hit another conditioning piece. Well, the odds that you have kind of the physical capacity to execute that piece at the intensity and the focus that we want is probably not there if you're coming off of a long Metcon, right? You need to recover, and maybe that's when it's like, and if you're saying, okay, well, I'll just go to the skill work. Well, are you fresh enough to actually put the focus that you need in order to do the skill work correctly? Is it, it's just 10 by 10 chest to bar pull-ups. Like, well, are your pull-ups so phenomenal that you can do 100 perfect chest to bar pull-ups? No, probably not. So you need a little bit of time between the end of that conditioning piece and the start of the next piece. And that means you're going to need to like re-warm up in some way for that next piece. So I think that's my thought.
I mean, it's a good thing to talk about too, because, I just had, Sophie and Alexis
Thank you for clarifying.
And,
yes.
One of the things I told them both that like I was doing over the course of the week while they were here is watching how they go to the gym. What do they do there? What are their habits they do? How do they warm up? How do they activate? How do they cool down? What does their session look like? And, I have my notes for our conversation post CrossFit games, but for a lot of athletes, they do follow that same pattern. My last piece was my warm up for this piece. I'll take 10 to 15 minutes and I'll be ready to go. And it's like, some days that might be appropriate. You have a 90-minute window and you got to squeeze things in, and, you're trying to fit what you can in, but you realize this isn't your everyday. An exception can be made occasionally. But if that's your every single day you train, you are leaving intensity on the table, and you're leaving exactly what you just said out there. You're not giving yourself the best opportunity to progress because you aren't giving yourself the time you need to get the adaptation you're after. So, I watch these things. I watch it from the affiliate member perspective. I watch it all the way up to CrossFit Games athletes, but you have to be thinking about being deliberate with how you get yourself ready to do something, because you are trying to deliberately get better at something. How can you do that if you don't give it the respect that it deserves in order to perform at a certain level that's going to create that adaptation you're looking for?
Yeah, and the idea of an athlete being able to fuel themselves throughout all this as well, if we're just smashing all of these pieces out in a specific window. The research is out there. There's actually a new paper that was released somewhere recently, and I mean the study was based on women only, but they ate protein earlier in the day and had a lifting session, or they didn't. And one group got significantly stronger and added more muscle than the other.
Oh, come on.
I'm wondering which one that would be.
Are you kidding me?
Right? So there's a pretty good chance that you should be doing your fasted cardio, eating something, and then having to warm up after that, after the digestion, then going in to the deadlift. And that's why this takes so much time. That's why people are at the gym for as long as they are, and why all of it is so important, and why we're trying to do everything on purpose instead of just either monkey see, monkey do, or, whatever got you into your routine or how you attack the workout. Or if you just love the fact that you can post a story of every single piece, even though maybe you're only in the gym for 2.5 hours. That shouldn't even be possible. That shouldn't even be a thing that someone could accomplish. So you can see how we're starting to make our way through this day, and, a lot is happening, and a lot of things need to happen in between those things. And that's how you end up with someone trying to make the designation between, I want to be a professional athlete and I'm like a hobbyist when it comes to this. And obviously we serve both communities, but they're not the same community. Let's talk scenarios of why you would ski, wall ball, or deadlift first. If the deadlift is a weakness of yours, you have your own 2 scenarios. One, you put it first so that your central nervous, you have the most in your gas tank to be able to execute on it. That seems simple. If you don't warm up well, that concept kind of gets shit on a little bit, and you might need the ski wall ball piece to be able to then go deadlift and be there. So that's either a thing that has to do with your history as an athlete and your strengths and weaknesses, or it's another nod to, hey, stop going through the fucking motions and do your warm up the way that you're supposed to. Do a warm up where you end up with a high heart rate, you're sweaty, you've, activated the muscle groups that need to, then you might not need to be that guy anymore that has to go do a Metcon first to be able to get into that. But there's a reason why barbells feel different in warm-ups than in actual training pieces. And if you don't feel that same way about your 1x6 at 60%, like if it feels stale, if it feels like you're just, starting to work into the groove, right? It's a no-go.
Cool. That was like 25% of your strength session.
Now, you guys would probably both deadlift second, correct?
I would, yeah.
Probably. I don't think for me, like I am a strong deadlifter specifically, but I am also somebody who would benefit from getting stronger, like overall.
Yeah, your deadlift application is very practical, like
right.
in the CrossFit sense.
Yes.
Not as much. You'd like to be able to pull more for one,
yes,
or two,
correct.
whatever.
Yeah, and just general, especially with the deadlift, it obviously doesn't exclusively develop like strength in the specific deadlift. Like the full body demand of the deadlift is I would arguably unrivaled, other than maybe a heavy squat. But
so it's unrivaled. Yeah. It just fucks so many people up that we have to rely on the squat more.
And for me, but for me, like maybe it doesn't fuck me up as bad. So it does benefit me personally, just from hey, I'm an athlete who is comparatively, I would like to get stronger. So I might do that first. That would be my rationale for it. But that doesn't.
And why would you do it second?
Primarily because it's a strength of mine. I mean, I'm not anywhere near as strong as I was, but I still can pull a very competitive, even to like an elite level, like deadlift, because it's my best lift. So for me, it's something I definitely need to make sure I keep. Once you get good at something, doesn't mean you just don't do it ever again. It means that you can prioritize other things ahead of it. So for me, looking at that workout, I know it's coming next. You guys can't see it yet, but I know it's a back and forth of wall balls and skiing, which, is meant to be kind of a cardio feel to it, which is my weakness. That's one of my worst styles of workouts. And the time domain being in that, like, probably 12 to 18 minutes, probably even longer. I'm just doing the math really quickly, but it's a longer workout, which is typically a weakness of mine. So that becomes priority number one. I know that I'm going to be freshest. I'm going to have the most focus. I can't blame the fact that I've already pulled some deadlifts or did some handstand walking. That's the reason I didn't give it good effort, which is unfortunately something we hear a lot with athletes. Oh, I did this before, that's why this didn't go well. And it's like, yeah, those things do matter, but like, what could you have done differently to give yourself a better chance to do better? Something like putting it first. Prioritizing a weakness is a great way to do that. Or again, like we talked about just a second ago, giving yourself adequate time to actually ramp up and ramp back down between things and refuel so you can give it your best effort. So just looking at it, it's a good stimulus for me to work on. So I'm going to prioritize that first.
And this is kind of important too. These two movements, like you're pretty good at both, like the three movements that we're talking about: wall balls, skiing, and deadlifting. Like,
thanks,
man. Fuck, like
yeah,
top 100 in the world in an open workout, something like that. But this is a good example of, this is not a wall ball workout. This is not a skiing workout. This is a cardio workout.
Sure.
And it's like, sure, hey, you can do all those wall balls unbroken. You can ski at a pretty solid pace, but it's like, when we put those two together, like you're chasing the stimulus and how fast you can go. It's not like, man, all right, how slow can I ski and do these wall balls unbroken? No, like that's not the purpose. It's a cardio stimulus. So that's what you're
actually
after.
An excellent point too. It says right there, the goal of this piece is to maintain unbroken wall balls while staying aerobic on the ski. Like, if you are doing those wall balls and then you're taking, 30 seconds before you start skiing, like consider a lighter ball. Right? Allow yourself to move back and forth between those two pieces. So like personalization in this workout could be, you lop off the top round, or you go with a lighter wall ball, or you reduce the distance on the ski because you can't stay aerobic and your heart's in your throat. So like, and I haven't gone really into the personalization of this specific piece, but like there are many different ways to make sure that you can keep that aim that we kind of included. This is a snippet at the bottom of the workout for you. You should almost even, that's where you probably should start. Like read what the goal of the piece is and then read the piece. and then digest that and say, all right, like, how do I make this piece work for me? Because everyone's going to be a little bit different here. People are going to gravitate. Like you said, I'm good at both those movements. Doesn't mean I'm good at this workout.
Right. The one thing that I don't want to skip over when it comes to the actual deadlift session is that a lot of people think that if I move from point A to point B with a certain percentage of my max, that the musculature that's being developed checks the box of the high central nervous system lift, the lift that is going to manipulate my muscle fibers to the point where I can, do more in a 1 rep max. So it was one of those lifts in each phase with us. This has been top of mind because we have a younger athlete right now in the gym that wants to be super competitive. And the, glaring weakness is not being as strong as people who have been doing CrossFit for longer than him. I want him chasing the feeling that you get from a high CNS lift, from that, like you pull a heavy deadlift and you have that like almost blackout, whoa,
stumble back a little bit. Like
that is manipulating something different within your nervous system. And that is so freaking important, and why we have put deadlift into phase 1 versus the actual back squat, which has a more specific need now in terms of skill transfer to the Olympic lifts. We're putting deadlift there, and I don't want to say we're being overly aggressive because obviously there's a lot more to be done throughout the day. But if you follow this the way that you're supposed to, you will completely change your nervous system. So if you're going into the deadlift and you like to deadlift, but you don't necessarily, again, put enough eggs into that basket with how much effort you're putting into it and how hard you squeeze the bar and how hard you're bracing, and, you got the music turned up or whatever you need to do to get jazzed up, you're not going to get the same benefit as someone else who, surprise, surprise,
it's no different than that person you see in the gym that, is back squatting. You can tell before they pick the bar to the rack, they're going to fail their rep because they're like going into it ho hum. They're not, not fired up about the workout. Maybe the back squat, they don't
spaghetti
like
body.
Yeah, just going to it like limp noodle, and they're like, fuck, I can't squat 315. It's like, yeah, because you like fell asleep before you tried to pick the bar up.
Like an al dente over there.
You need to get yourself turgid, but you need to get yourself turned up, because something like this, like, yes, I could do all these percentages, no problem, right? But getting the barbell from the ground to the standing isn't the only thing you can accomplish in this piece. You can figure out, did I narrow my stance? Did I fix my grip a little bit? Did I get myself in a more advantageous position for my body type? There are so many different things you can gain from a session like this, other than check 60%, check 70%, and getting it all done. But that's what separates those high level performers, the ones that get all they can from these sessions, people who just do it. Like, they're thinking about all the things they fixed or got better at today. And sometimes when you're doing percentage work, you're not pulling a new WMAX. So how do you know you're getting better? It's because you do something like that and you reflect upon it when you're done your session, or before you do your 70, you're like, what was good about 60 and what could have been better?
So maybe we've done this piece already. Maybe we've done the other piece, but a way to start to wrap your mind around doing everything on purpose and having an ideal training day as often as possible is to just, like, we started it already, but just to dissect the shit out of that workout. So you've got ski wall ball. For the majority of people, it's like, okay, we are looking to hit descending larger quote unquote unbroken sets with the wall ball and not ski to the point where we are going to negatively affect the wall ball. Now, some people will look at this and see this as a wheelhouse workout, and they can make changes to that strategy. Sherb's biggest issue as an athlete right now that he is trying to fix is that he does huge sets and then takes a bunch of rest in between. Right. So for him, it's like, okay, I get done my 40 wall balls. My hands better be on the ski handles as quick as possible. And my hands better be back on the wall ball as quick as possible. And if I have to break mid wall ball, that is better in this scenario than having any sort of gap when it comes to transitions. The athletes that have the fucking time warp, you can't understand how they're going so damn slow and they always win, are the athletes who never take long breaks. Like, Kenzie was just here. You can see the mock games episodes on YouTube, and she is terrified of standing around in a workout, and you can tell. There are moments where
the bar was so infuriating. Should do 10 of them, rest for like 0.6 seconds
Yes.
and then finish them.
Because so that we talk about how she pisses people off when she talks about how bad she is. she believes it because she believes it that fast in a workout. When she drops and she's like, so-and-so is going unbroken right now. And it's like, she goes right back up. Like she has that moment of unbroken doesn't make sense for me, but I'm going to go there. Exactly. So again, you need to see this piece as something that is a prescription for you to improve, and you go into it and you say, okay, what part of this, if this was in competition, would fuck me up, and how do I work on that? How do I go in and work on that specific thing? Sherbs is I cannot stand around. Typically, you only stand around in transition. So you like hold on for dear life to get those extra toes to bar or bar muscle ups done or whatever. And then when you go walk over and have to clean the bar up for push jerks, it's like
a lot slower.
Exactly. Yeah. So what does that mean? That means you typically specifically need to slow your first round down a little bit. You get those fresh rounds and, throw them out there.
Yesterday too, and I paid for it.
So again, to make sure that you are getting everything that you possibly can out of your training, this workout exists in a bubble. Yes, you warmed up to get yourself to a place where you can do this and do it properly and not have that ridiculous heart rate spike and then fall off and then regain it, towards the end. We've reached that place, but that's in the past and there's nothing else after. It's just this piece. How could this piece possibly make me get better? And as we break that down and as you start to figure that out, you're going to start to get a lot more out of your training pieces and you're going to be less obsessed with volume. There's not going to be as many moments where it's like, oh, I'm not getting this, as much out of it. You're going to sleep better. You're going to feel like, holy shit, I'm dead. Like that is the feeling that you're chasing with the least amount of pieces possible. And then you can learn to actually add and go through that. One really important piece when it comes to this workout is we got to start talking about cool down a little bit. If you leave the waste accumulated from the skier, or not from the skier, from the wall balls in your legs,
75 wall balls.
It's gonna
the math, bro.
It's gonna be a problem. I thought it was 150. Is it more? Oh yeah, when it's a 20-pound ball, I usually make people do more than 150 because that's fun. So 65. How do we cool down from something like this? We got to stay moving. We got to make sure that we are way, 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 way below that lactate threshold because that's where you've accumulated the waste in this piece. We did it on purpose. If I do a piece personally that is longer like this, but kind of maintains that range of motion and that intensity, there's really no place to stop or hide or whatever. I actually do try to have a 1-to-1 correlation in terms of how long I will walk on the treadmill or ride the assault bike at a insanely slow pace afterwards.
A lot of people use those fitness trackers. Are a really good way to make sure you're kind of back in that situation. So you should be in the ability to have a full conversation with somebody, but you can use your heart rate on either your Apple Watch, your Whoop, or whatever you use, and make sure you're back, down around 100 or so. Like you're in that very conversational heart rate zone, and that you don't feel like your tissues are no longer like on fire or warming up. If you're still dripping sweat, like you probably could go a little longer on that cool down. And again, that's a habit that allows you to then think about doing your next piece. If you just try to basically towel off, wait 10 minutes and do your next one, you've accumulated waste you haven't gotten out of your body yet. So you might feel like you're still going hard, but you're going at 90 or 80% of your best because you never got yourself through that situation where you flush things out. So for me personally, I love the C2 bike or the skier, depending on what I used in the situation. I know I just skied a bunch, but I probably would ski for a couple of minutes nice and slow at 600-700 cals an hour.
You don't remember your college textbook? If you play tennis and you get sore from it, just play super slow tennis the next day.
Ping pong?
And you'll be fine. Play slow tennis. What the fuck are you talking about?
Slow tennis? Like going to a pool, swing the racket around.
Have a loaf of bread and a sports drink. You'll be fine.
That's right. And 16 donuts.
But there are Easter eggs planted all throughout your day about whether you are overtrained or whether you're going through the motions. Because if you are unwilling to grab a buddy and go for a 20-minute walk, what resources do you have left?
Yeah.
If you can start to see the writing on the wall. It's hard for a lot of people, especially if you're more type A, to admit that you're being a fucking baby. But if you refuse to cool down, so that you feel better before the next piece.
Me you can't cool down, but that you can do what the next piece is, which is like rowing sprints. Like,
exactly.
Like, oh yeah, like let's hear that.
What does that mean?
I'm listening. Like,
right.
Yeah. I think to me, like, I don't know if that was a rhetorical question or not, but I'm going to answer it. It's like to me, that means you're in survival mode. You are surviving the training day. You are looking at the entirety of it and saying, I have to do this number of training pieces. Can I get from start to finish? And that is one of probably the dumbest things you can do. Like if it's
the thing we see slow people down the most in their journey to be the fittest version of themselves.
I'm writing 4 or 5 training pieces on a whiteboard or pulling it up on a screen or whatever and being like, all right, here we go. Like marathon training session. Like, fuck, man, that sucks. Like that ain't it.
Yeah.
You get fit. The problem with it is that it works for a little while. And especially people who get really into it, it works. And it's like, wow, like, look at all of this that I did. And they missed, maybe they just kind of get ahead of themselves. They let the fitness train, like, accelerates. And it's like, yeah, fuck yeah. Like, why would I not do this? It will stop. Like, it will come to an abrupt halt to the point where it's very frustrating. And there's a place for experiencing that as an athlete. I think that is like an important developmental kind of stage for an athlete to experience to a certain degree. But if you've been doing it for a long time and you are looking at the training pieces and are just like, this is going to put me in a grave. This is going to kill me. Like, this is a rough training day. Like, there's a place for that. But if you're surviving, you're gonna, that is not a sustainable, you're effectively testing, which we've talked about in the past.
Right. And the whole going through the motions thing, I think, is how people get set up to believe certain narratives about themselves. I am this, I'm not that. And we have someone who's been a gym member of ours for, goodness, 7, 8, 9 years, something like that. And he grew up in Rwanda, and he just has all of these little like mindset things that blow my fucking mind. These, pieces of perspective where you think about it, you try to take the lesson and insert it into things that you do. And he's an artist, and he'll, draw or paint something amazing. And for me, like, because I've never been great at drawing or things like that, I want to know how that's possible. I don't understand it. And then he tells me that the right eye took 13 hours. So he's drawing a portrait, and it's like, if I had 13 hours to draw an eye, if I could even open my mind up to the possibility of what that could look like, when you watch them do it, there's the light pencil sketch. That's probably like the best drawing I've ever done, but it's still not a great drawing. Yeah. And then they work their way through it, and they're looking at reference photos, and they're learning, and they're changing, and they're developing, and they're becoming creative in the moment. They're not relying on, I am some whiz that can paint this in 2 seconds.
Fully immersed in what they're doing and not worrying about like other shit.
So then you think about wanting things faster. You think about wanting your training to just take over immediately versus having the patience to see that. You think about it from just the perspective of, the ski wall ball piece is the eye in this scenario, or whatever piece you're about to do. You are going to take the time, and you're going to do everything that you can to really milk that to get to that point. And if you start to apply that sort of thinking to your training, again, you won't be so obsessed with how much have I done. Yes, there are athletes out there that are painting 6 eyes a day, and they are all in. There is nothing that's not on purpose.
Yeah, they're doing
everything that it takes
that we're talking about to enable that.
Exactly. But they certainly didn't go from 1 to 6.
Yeah.
No.
Like, snap of the fingers, get to that point.
I think, Ted, I think there's one more mandatory.
Yeah, the handstand walk. So one of the things, we'll do an entire phase 1 podcast, but we've got essentially the handstand push-up throwback to the old school CrossFitter, the flight simulator. We are working people through a progression from the beginning of the phase. So you have a test that has a bunch of handstand walking in it. And then you are going to go through and add just a little bit by little bit as you go through the phase. So we have this now, and this means this piece means something different to a lot of different athletes, right? Mm-hmm. Like some people who are less skilled on their hands, can I survive this piece? Some people are so good on their hands that it's like, am I going to be able to just kick down, turn around, and come back up? How fast, not only how quick are my rest periods between, but how fast can I walk on my hands? Like literally how you would interpret, you're running, even though they're upside down. So this is a progression. Again, probably not 1,000% necessary to be like to do a primer before this. But again, we don't want within that skill session for you to only get to fine tune and feel your body in space in your last 2 or 3 sets.
We also have a really good video on our YouTube channel on how to warm up for handstand walking. And I think it's like a 5 or 6 minute video, but I think you and I shot that together, but it's a really quick and easy, like here are a few drills to do prior to handstand walking that will take you, I don't know, a handful of minutes. That'll give you the best opportunity to do well here.
I mean, an 8-second handstand hold, isn't it?
Oh, I thought you just kicked up on your hands and started. Isn't that the warm up?
The human body is such an amazing thing, but when we're talking about the upper body and the bone structure in your shoulder, your elbow, and your wrist, there's like no way for blood to get through. It's a fucking problem. Yeah. It's not the best design. That's why people get injured at the joint a little bit more. When you get to places, again, knee and ankle, another issue. It's not just that they've got more of a complex structure there, but it is hard to warm up those tissues to get to the point where you can use the musculature that's there. We need blood flow, we need activation, and the more, if you're going into multi-joint, the more that you start to add that up, wrist, elbow, shoulder,
and don't forget about proprioception too.
You need to warm up.
You need to know where your body is in space. And that's another great reason for those drills is, one of the 10 general physical skills is, having that coordination. Being upside down teaches you about where your body is in space. And I don't know about you guys, but my first handstand walk of the day is always my worst. It always feels terrible. Feels like I've never really done it before. And then after a couple of walks, I'm like, oh yeah, I could do this piece. But taking 2 to 5 minutes to warm up, if you're really trying to get better at something like this, is 100% worth your investment. You just have to accept the fact that you should do that, and it's going to add a little bit of extra time to your day. But if you are doing this with the intent that we want, you will take that time.
You also can think about it from a more long-term perspective as far as warming up for things like this. It's if, especially, and this is probably one of the most common kind of mobility issues we see in CrossFitters, is just a dog shit, respectfully, overhead position. And whether respectfully, whether it's with a barbell and a jerk grip or an overhead squat position, we see so many athletes my back explodes when I do overhead squats and burpees or box jumps. Why does that happen? It's well, because your overhead positioning is so bad that it's putting that all of the load is being supported by L4 and L5. So when we think about this, it's okay,
you just be mean to me and then say no offense.
Sorry, no, count. Respectfully. I said respectfully at the beginning of the sentence, so it counts. It's always respectful. But if you are one of those athletes, it's you're not just warming up for handstand walking, spend the extra 3 minutes flossing each shoulder and stuff like that. And eventually that's going to pay off when you go overhead with the barbell. Cause we're not exclusively practicing handstand walking. We're developing kind of that strength and stamina upside down, which, oh man, you mean handstand push-ups go away at some point? So warm up, when you warm up for these things, you're also improving. You have the advantage of getting a little bit of, you're moving the needle in the right direction skill for transfer. Something else that might be holding you back.
So at this point in the day, we have potentially done fasted cardio, multiple warm-ups, a cool down, a high CNS lift session, skill session, a long Metcon.
I gotta go home for dinner. Sorry, guys.
We've got probably 2 meals at this point, plus a protein shake. If you are exhausted listening to this, think about how tired you would be accomplishing something like this. I believe that what we have just covered is the baseline for an athlete to enter into the competitive space. What we have just explained is essentially the hatchet program if we don't move on and add anything. Maybe there is a day where there is only 1 or 2 pieces that are mandatory and you're personalizing more, but that doesn't change the narrative that we're creating of what it takes to lift heavy, work on a skill, do a conditioning piece, have fasted cardio to go through that. Every single time you manipulate your body and your energy systems, you are creating an opportunity for nutrients and carbohydrates and protein and all these things to enter into your body and go to the places that they need to go. So if you are kicking your own ass and fasting all day because there was a Misfit Project episode that said it helps to not eat breakfast, you're not understanding where we're coming from and what the point of these things are. Now we can move on. Like we can keep going within this ideal day for someone who's trying to make it to semifinals, the CrossFit Games. But I feel like stopping there just for a second and saying, think about all of this.
We're already at like 2 hours plus of work, cool down, warm up. I'm like, you've already committed 2+ hours here. And I would say that's probably not including the fasted cardio, which is adding another 30 to 40
Well,
minutes
mathematically, it's definitely not including the fasted cardio or the food breaks.
Yeah, or the breaks there. So I'm saying like just of like very specific, I'm warming up, I'm exercising, I'm doing the training piece or I'm cooling down. I'm saying just that, not including fasted cardio, not including the meals. Now you're asking someone to do those things. For a lot of people, asking them to do multiple sessions. You get up, you do your fasted cardio. Maybe you have the luxury of having a rope at your house, but if you don't, you turn it into pull-ups or something else you want to work on. You take your break, you hydrate, you refuel, and now we're going into the gym for our first session. And that might be it right there. And we're at 2.5, 3 hours of work already, and we haven't even talked about, all right, I have bigger dreams than that, or I'm able to now keep playing. What does that look like? Which is the next step here. I
think this is where you stop and say, am I surviving? Am I going to choose to do another training piece and am I just going to survive through it? Or have I really put in a solid effort on the three training pieces throughout the day? And yes, I do actually have the energy to not only like the physical energy to execute another training piece, but also can I re-engage the focus? Can I re-warm up for a hang power snatch and a bar muscle up, or can I prime my system for some rowing sprints or something like that? And if the answer is I'm just going to jump in and start doing it, nope. You are digging that hole deeper, and you are not going to be able to fill it back in before you have to go again. So this is to me the mandatory stuff is that's the stop point where it's like, is what I'm going to do next going to be more beneficial, or would it benefit me more to get some food, do some soft tissue work, go home and sleep, or go home and sleep?
Right. All right. So we have now at this point, you're either going to be done, which we just addressed, or we're going to add one more piece. Your choices on this specific day, we have a medium muscular overload interval piece or a send bitch work piece. Now, a lot of times you are looking at, so Ted's got it up on the screen right now, bitch work, 4 rounds, 375 meter row sprint, rest 4 minutes.
You disrespectful swine.
Sherp's fault. We'll just throw that out there. But one of the things that we try to do from the macro level is say, okay, if we are only choosing one more piece, can we create some sort of line in the sand? Can we juxtapose the two pieces together? If I was this athlete, we're applying general stereotypes here, but if I was this athlete, what would the other piece, why would I want to do this versus the other one that goes there? And I mean, there's a lot of reasons. So we've got hang power snatch, bar muscle up, double under in the medium time domain with the rest built in there. It is an interval. So there's a lot that we can unpack here. I think it would be almost too hard not to get into the weeds and get too boring.
Yeah.
But I think the sniff test goes first. You're looking at both pieces. Which one do I need to do more? Typically, pretty obvious. Do you guys want to take the sniff test?
Might go there again.
I think we could probably it'll be a good conversation because I imagine we'll go in the opposite direction.
Sherbs is very, very obvious.
Yeah.
Sherbs does not need roast.
Okay. Like,
let me roll.
Yeah. To me, I'm like, I would benefit from both in some way because I would see one.
But in this scenario, you are adding another piece and you are the competitor you wish you were in 2012.
Yeah. I need to row.
Right.
I really dislike rowing. I dislike rowing really hard even more.
You love that duration.
Talk about writing on the wall.
Yeah, fuck.
That duration's beautiful.
It's there.
Suck. You want me to row really hard for like, was that probably like a minute 15, something like that?
Yes, sir.
4 times. Like that's fucked.
What's the answer? So I don't even think I can enter into this conversation. There's no world where I've already done all of those pieces. And then I'm like, all right,
let's do this.
Saddle up.
But I actually don't, for me, know the answer to this because I'm so bad at rowing, but that's my favorite energy system. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Like for me, obviously now, like, if I have no pieces to choose,
the first 250 meters are your favorite energy system
on round 1.
On round 1. You think you could send 375 meters?
Well, again, the problem is this hypothetical scenario means that I am
4/10 of a time.
Like
4/10 of a time.
Right now, I don't think I can pull on the rower at all.
Yeah, fair.
But again, so we're going into this. This type of stuff matters, and that's why I would bring it up. So if you're always just saying I love to send, but you're great at sending when it comes to, I don't know, the ski erg or sprints, but you don't love sending on the rower or the assault bike, whatever it is, something that is more full body, something that is more like, I'm just not like, that is my energy system in CrossFit, but I need a little bit more practice on how to get the bike, up to X wattage or whatever it is. So there is nuance that is super important when it comes to this.
You've talked to me about this in the past too, and something we've kind of researched and figured out there is like the rowers have the biggest cross-sectional area of their muscle tissue, like in their quads and legs, and like the adaptation that can be gained from going that hard 4 times is just, there isn't many things that feel that way. It's the same way if you do like a 3x25-second assault bike sprint with like 7 hours of rest in between, like, how terrible that's going to be, but how much better you're going to feel when you're done. You're going to get that crazy endorphin rush once the pain subsides because of the adaptation you've created in your tissue. And, you're looking at something like this, a very common test you see at competitions, a 1K row. This is a little bit more than that. But if you can get into a situation where you're competing and there's 300 meters left, exactly how hard you have to go, exactly what it's going to feel like, and you've put in the time, what your body is capable of, and roughly what that line is where, all right, I can't sprint anymore. So when you go to compete or when you go back to another piece that maybe puts 300 meters and repeats and rounds, what percentage of your all out effort is that going to feel like, and what's that going to do to my body? So I look at this piece and I say to myself, like, all right, like I know that's going to be a gross duration. We all know that the first 10 or 15 seconds on a rower feels like a freebie, feels like a gimme, but then you got to work really hard for about a minute, which, for best bang for your buck, best investment on your time, going really hard a few times for a minute almost always moves the needle for people. And like you said, it's a skill being able to go that hard for that long and knowing what it feels like to repeat. I think back to like the Ringer 1 and 2 from the CrossFit games. Like, James Newberry sent it and beat Matt on the first part, but Matt was like, cool, man, I'll take 96 points and beat you by an hour on the next one. So enjoy, because he knew he had enough, training volume in that he knew that he could go back and do this. So you get to learn a lot about yourself here. You figure out what your power output is. You figure out what your aerobic recovery is like. You figure out what the line in the sand is, where you can go. There's so much to gain here. And it's not just row 375 4 times and then check, done.
Right. Okay. So again, we've made this choice to do this extra piece. That means, do we have the wherewithal to warm up again? Do we have the wherewithal to, especially if you're going to go out and send, or to be honest, if you're going to do that many double unders, there's a cool down aspect that could make or break the rest of your week. Not rolling out your feet versus rolling out your feet pre and post, things where you jump a lot can make, such a massive difference. So, now I think we've moved into the other realm, once you've executed on this piece, yes, there's a possibility of having the optional accessory work. The optional accessory work, I think, pops up in two scenarios. Scenario number one, you're a ridiculous outlier and you are amazing at conditioning, every energy system, all the movements. You're trying to get better at your strength work. Maybe that does get prioritized and you do an accessory session after you lift to make sure that you're building the supporting musculature after it's started to fire. But for most people, this blends in with the end of the day, the soft tissue work, the stretching, the ROM-WOD, all of that stuff all starts to blend together, and that can serve as part of your cool down. You're staying in the gym. You've continued to move. You're not going from your 186 heart rate, to fall off a cliff and then I'm going to be sedentary the rest of the day. Your body does not love that. That doesn't go super well. So we've started to move into that part of the day where your second protein shake and your third meal, the Hobbit style, second breakfast, third breakfast,
breakfast,
11 teas or whatever they call it. Anyways, so you're moving through all of this stuff, but we need a mental shift at this point. We absolutely positively need a mental shift. And the issue is when your nervous system gets trashed, that it's so much easier to go into fight or flight. When you're so tired and you have to deal with life afterwards, you have to, maybe you got to coach a class and someone asks you what a thruster is for the 94th time. Maybe.
Sorry, Mom.
Whatever it is, you're going home and you're like absolutely beat to shit and your significant other wants to know why you didn't, I don't know, take out the trash or something. Like I'm just
half full. Sorry.
like
Sherp's getting it.
You are going to be less able to deal with this shit at that point, but you have to switch your mindset into like, double peace sign. Like, yeah, man, everything's cool. Like, it's all good. I'll take the trash out. It's not a problem.
I get there usually. But I would agree with you. The mental shift of now, it's no longer about bashing your head into the wall and trying as hard as you can. The trying effort now is focus. It's deliberate. It's how can I get myself to do those things beautifully so that they carry over and create the adaptation that I'm looking for. And then, can I get myself completely wound down? Because, for a lot of these athletes, you're training midday, you're done by 2 or 3 in the afternoon. You still have 4 to 6 hours of life ahead of you that you need to get through. And you want to make sure that everything you've done has set you up to sort of recover as you're doing the rest of your life stuff so that you can rinse, repeat and do it all over again tomorrow. So, I actually talked to my athletes specifically about this. It's like, should I do this? It's like, yeah, it's there to help you specifically not only cool down, but to move through ranges of motion and build, those, chinks in the armor, try to, fill those up so that you don't have this issue where like you notice that, you struggle getting a double bounce of a back squat or something like that. Like these things carry over and, they take a very different mindset than the earlier half of the day where you're really just like, all right, can I figure out what I'm after and can I execute on that? Can you make this the way it's intended to be, which is to make you a better mover and a better athlete?
Do you think an athlete who's like, I don't have the energy or intensity to choose a send row piece or 15 minutes of power snatch, bar muscle up and double unders, but it's like, well, I could do the optional accessory. Would you tell that athlete like, go for it? Like, sure, go for it.
Yeah, absolutely. Because how do you bridge that gap? How do you become the athlete that starts to add volume if you always feel like you never went there?
Yeah.
The answer is sometimes you do take that leap and you add the piece and you see what happens. But then there's also, I'm going to spend more time in the gym. I'm going to do my accessory work. I'm going to become maniacal about my recovery, that sort of stuff. That's what can lend you to get into that. And going through more range of motion after you've trained is just one of the easiest ways to actually cool down and recover. So adding that in, one of the main reasons is it says optional on it is because of the volume that some of the highest level competitors do. We've reached a point, we've checked off so many boxes that like the wherewithal to go there may or may not help. So in this scenario, what you're saying, Hunter, is the opposite.
Yep.
It's like, okay, I do have a little bit left in the tank here and I want to bridge that gap eventually. I am going to put in a lot of like focus into my
you don't
accessory
need
work.
Quite the same amount of focus on something like that as you do in a conditioning thing.
Yeah, it's less challenging to focus.
Right.
And I think it's important to recognize and say that the reason there's so many training pieces in every single day there's so many different types of athletes that exist in our atmosphere, in our world. So without being able to write a specific program for one single person, we want to give you this variable training system where you can make a decision for yourself. But I agree with what you say. It's optional because a lot of people get wrapped around the axle because they're like, oh, there's 7 pieces. I have to do these 7.
Right.
I have to do it. And it's like, no, you are a very specific athlete with, if you look at the day, you're not very good at this, you're great at that, you're so at this, you're good at that. Pick those things that you're not very good at and make them the forefront, the brunt of your training day. And then if you have time, if you are looking to make the leap from hatchet to MFT or MFT to semifinals, every year you go and compete there, like those are how you move the needle and how you start to build in those things. But like, don't get obsessed with the fact that there are 9 options on the day and you feel like you got to do 8 of them every single day. Like, no, you do what we talked about in this podcast. You pick the ones that are important and typically hit somewhere between 2 and 5 pieces, including like warm-ups and everything else that we talked about. So I do think that is a conversation I've had with people in the past, is that like, why are there so many things if you don't want me to do them all? It's because there are so many different people out there and they all need different needs.
Yeah. So one of the big shifts and one of the ways that you can start to personalize this and add it back into what's going to happen the following day is start to pay attention to the signals that you're having when it comes to thirst and hunger and things of that nature. So one of the things that can happen if you're overtraining that makes it kind of obvious is you lose a bunch of weight. That is something that you can't have within our space. You need to be able to, especially in competition, call on a little bit of that body fat. That could be its own fucking episode. I look jacked, but I lose.
That's a great title for a podcast.
It's the name of my next book.
Look jacked, but lose.
I mean, I remember back to my paleo days. Like I was a shell of myself as an athlete, but it's like, yo, look at that photo, kid. What?
Brad Pitt?
Oh my goodness.
Fight Club?
Yes. But you're going into your evening, for most athletes anyway. Some athletes have to train in the evening, but you're going into that period of time after, and you have to pay such close attention to that. If you are drinking gallons of water once you're done training to when you wake up the next day, it's probably a signal that you train dehydrated throughout the day. We can lose 20+% of our VO2 max when we're dehydrated. So you're paying attention to how much water you're drinking throughout the day instead of only after, obviously making sure you're getting your electrolytes. Same idea with the food. If you get done and you are eating, the lion's share of your calories at night, that's going to be an issue for sleep quality all on its own. But then also, are you fueling yourself to continue to do these things throughout the day? And it's weird for us to talk about this because this is like the opposite way that we live our life, but we're talking to athletes. And again, that's another thing I think that gets confused sometimes is, especially me specifically, when it comes to athletes, I'm fucking Joe Schmo. I'm just trying to be a healthy person.
Yeah.
So someone might think that what I do personally is a choice that I have then made for competitors, which is absolutely not the case. So as you're going throughout the evening portion, we'll call it, are you dehydrated? Did you fuel yourself enough? Was there enough soft tissue work? Do you need to add more of it in at night when you're watching TV, winding down, whatever it is? Do you always just like once you truly fully cool down, you go to get up off the couch and you feel like you've been hit with baseball bats every night? Not a good sign. It's not what we're looking for. It could mean a bunch of different things, but really pay attention to those signals at night, because then that is information that you can use the following day and work into your routine. And then, the first time an athlete is truly hydrated and fueled throughout the entire training day, you're not going to feel like the same person.
I was going to say, like,
it's going to completely change how you feel.
2 athletes that come to mind. It's the one who has been doing too much for too long, and it's just that's their norm. They don't know what it feels like to feel good throughout an entire training day and get up and be able to do it again tomorrow. Or there's the person who's trying to figure this out by, you know, adding a little bit of training volume, and you're messing around with like the food to, you know, the recovery to training ratios, and trying to figure out what works for you. So
you learn not to have hot sauce for lunch.
Right. Yes.
Only before row sprints.
Oh my goodness. I was positive I was going to puke. I was so positive.
One of our coaches yesterday was just like, it was a burpee dumbbell snatch workout. And before, he was just like, we're going to find out if the bag of chips I just ate is going to play a factor in today's workout. And I was like,
I can't imagine who you're talking about.
Yeah, it was my question of the day became, what's your favorite?
I would know if it was me
of potato.
I'm the other person who would be the person in this scenario. So
Pre-workout chips.
Pre-workout Lay's.
that's Proper's next. It's actually just you open the canister
Pre-workout
and we've
salt
just
and vinegar
pulverized
chips.
Lay's into a powder. You mix that in.
I tried it.
Imagine powdered Lay's in
Powdered
water.
Lay's. I can't imagine it. Sounds delicious.
I'm in.
All right. We move into yet another stage where hopefully you've started to figure these things out. It literally is on
Come
purpose.
on.
I wanted to tire you guys out. Ted turned the heat lamps up a little bit in here.
Sweating.
So
Glistening.
the mandatory like flip off the light switch. We've got full episodes on this. I don't know what they're called. Go back through the podcasts and look for the episodes where we talk about recoveries and the title, whatever, but turning things on and turning things off. 2 hours before bed, we got to shut it off. We have to. We got to go there. This has to be, if you're a competitor, this has to be an agreement with every single person in your household. It has to be an agreement with your boss that's fucking texting you, asking you for whatever. Like,
Yeah, fuck off, Ted. I'll get to the description soon.
we're so worried about Hunter's recovery.
Listen,
But that like when we're talking to gym members, when we are talking to people that have lifestyles that are more like us, this always feels like a suggestion. This always feels like I really wish I could convince you to do this, but I'm thinking you might not. Like we're thinking of new ways to go there. With a high level athlete, this is so black and white. If you don't if part of your routine is not doing, this could be a double negative, you can correct me, not doing fuck all for 2 hours before you go to bed, there is a problem. We have to get down to that place. I don't care if you like to walk outside with your dog, watch Netflix with your blue light blocking glasses on, read a book. You know, some people are crazy and they put red light bulbs in there. You know, they no longer see the light anymore. There's all kinds of different ways you can personalize what it means for you to turn things off. But going there physically or mentally after that point, if you are a serious athlete, it's no good. Can't happen.
I actually had this conversation with two teenagers because they're younger and a little inexperienced with like what it takes to be a high level competitor. And, you know, one of the things I asked them when they were like, hey, I feel like I'm dragging, or it feels like there's too much volume this phase. And, you know, one of the things we always talk about is like, if things aren't feeling good, like speak up, advocate for yourself, say, hey, there's too much volume, or is there something I'm not doing correctly so I can fix this? So, you know, we set up a rule of thumb that like you basically by 8 p.m., like you're off your phone, you're not texting, you're not on Instagram, and you're using.
If you told me that when I was a kid,
I tell you to fuck
texting
off.
girls playing Snake, no chance. That would have been the worst team CrossFit Games.
texting girls playing Snake.
He's playing
Texting girls who were
and
playing Snake, or texting girls while you were playing Snake.
I don't appreciate you guys twisting my words.
You got your BlackBerry. You got your BlackBerry.
Snake were you playing?
Let's get
But the conversation
now back to the show.
Who's Snake? Wait, no.
But the conversation again was just like, hey, if you think about what the best are doing, and I know that you both have the desire to be on the top of the podium, do you think those fellow competitors who are in other divisions, whether they're individuals or teenagers, are staying up to 12, doing whatever the hell they want, watching hours of reruns of terrible shows like Friends? Like,
Oh,
that's a show you can see. And
That's the funniest show ever.
Funniest show ever. But are you doing those things, or are you asking yourself, like, am I just filling up time until tomorrow? And for a lot of athletes, it's the mindless activities that are causing the inability to recover for the next day. So like, you know, when we started talking about, hey, T-minus 2 hours, start stretching, put on the blue light blocking glasses, read a book, get off screens, you know, and then you hear back a couple of weeks later, like, hey, I feel a lot better. And it's like, I didn't change your volume. I just told you to sleep and you did it. And it made a huge difference.
That's a good, for me, a lot of the like in between times are the indicators of how successful an athlete is or has the potential to be. Is it the warm up and the cool down? Like, are you doing those things? Am I eating or doing soft tissue work between training pieces throughout the day? At the end of the day, do I have the discipline to put on the blue light blockers, turn off the Instagram, whatever I'm watching or whatever? But because it's really easy to get excited about the training pieces, about exercising and about, trying as hard as you can and lifting more weight and going faster and stuff like that. But it's far more difficult to be excited about. And I'm not suggesting that you need to be fired up about throwing blue light blockers on, but
so fired up right now.
Yeah, but
I'm gonna run through
those at the highest, at the semifinals and I would say especially at like a semifinals level, because that's a lot of the people that we're talking to at the and higher. It's everybody's training hard. Everybody has a program. Everybody's working is. Supposedly working on their weaknesses, is working on the things that they think that they need to do to get to the next level or to achieve the goals that they want. But the in-between times are where a lot of people separate themselves. Not many people are, get excited about or talking about how their sleep goes or what their morning or bedtime routine is. They're excited about the metcons, the lifts, the conditioning, all that sort of stuff. But the needle movers happen significantly, or a lot of them happen outside of those training times.
I think that's kind of the perfect wrap up to the topic, because if the sport is maturing at the rate in which we are perceiving it to be, then each season there's just that thing that was the game changer that is now the norm for everybody. Is everyone actually finally manipulating all of their energy systems? Are people starting to go out and swim? Are people not forgetting that the pegboard exists for 9 months out of the year? Each year that we move through this stuff that used to be how someone was so much better than everyone else becomes everyone else's norm. How do we then make sure that everything that we do is on purpose and that we are gaining an edge over our competition? We do exactly what Hunter just said. You start to take other things seriously and go into it. And I want to bookend it just by saying it can sound like we think this shit is easy when we're talking about it. Obviously, basically nothing.
Fuck. I did it for like 3 days with Caroline. I wanted to die. Obviously none of this is easy. And a lot of it, like when it starts to get preachy about put your phone down, don't be looking at Instagram. That's because literally the smartest people on planet Earth are hacking into your personal biology, something that none of us can handle. Something where like bright, shiny lights were a good thing in the caveman days. So now we can stare at our phones for however many hours. And, that's how someone can spend $5 billion riding a rocket up into space for 10 seconds because they've figured out how to hack your biology and your DNA. Like, these things are super challenging. It's really hard to turn off at night, but we bring them up and we talk about them and make them seem black and white because it's one of the only ways that we're going to continue to move the needle day after day.
One thing I'd add is just take the time to think about what you're doing and why you're doing it. I know that's kind of been the entire theme for this podcast, but like, if you can't definitively say why you're about to do something, don't do it. Just don't do it. Ask yourself, why am I doing this piece? What am I trying to get better at? If you can't answer those two questions very quickly, then you probably shouldn't do the piece.
Don't fucking lie to yourself.
True.
There's a pretty good chance that if you're listening to this, and you've made it this far, you are following Misfit Athletics. As we stated before, this is a unique time for us coaching at the CrossFit Games, writing programming, getting set up to get people ready for 2022. The next 2 weeks on the blog are not a comp block. They're not a phase. They're, it's purgatory essentially. Fun. So this week, when this podcast publishes, we will have partner week. We wrote workouts that are supposed to be fun because you're doing them with your friend. Sherb's doing the air quotes for anyone listening right now instead of watching on YouTube. We're going to ask you to go hard, but have fun while you're doing it. We're also going to be, while we are at the CrossFit Games this week, we are going to be posting ideas of how you could swap in one of the games workouts and make it more of a at-home type thing. So keep an eye on our Instagram story. not after 8 p.m. Keep an eye on our Instagram story to see what we are going to be doing in terms of, hey, do you want to try this one out? You want to see how you stack up? Here's how we would do it if we were doing it just in your everyday CrossFit gym. And then the following week, 1 week from when this podcast is posted, I believe August 2nd, that week is what we are calling Phase 1 Primer Week. We are making sure that we are bringing everyone back into all of this volume and all of this intensity and doing all of this stuff on purpose instead of going through the motions, by giving you essentially a preview and giving your bodies a little bit of a head start on what is the certain stimulus we're going for. What are we looking for? The official Phase 1 start date is August 9th, but if you are looking to ramp back up, if you've been doing lower volume, you need a little bit of a break, or you are new to Misfit Athletics, I highly suggest getting started on August 2nd instead of August 9th and really sort of working your way through that and making sure, because that week's going to feel a lot like where we ended with those mandatory pieces. It's not going to be any pick pieces there. It's just going to be, here's what the stimulus is for the phase, and we can kind of go for that.
Go get them.
Cool.
I think we did it.
We did.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for tuning into another episode of the podcast. Thank you to our show sponsors, PureSpectrumCBD.com. Use the code word Misfit, SharpenTheAxeCo.com. Use your favorite Misfit Athletics athlete code to support their journey. You've seen the morning chalk up. You've seen that it's $190,000 for every athlete to go to the CrossFit Games. I don't know who's staying in the Ritz-Carlton over here. All jokes aside, it is extremely expensive. All of them, it is their first name. So your favorite Misfit Athletics athlete, head to SharpenTheAxeCo.com, buy a little something. They're going to get a kickback for that. You can support their journey. And MisfitAthletics.com, TeamMisfit.com, SugarWOD Marketplace. Phase 1 is starting August 9th. We are so excited to ramp back up and have this full season when we know things, we know like actually where they are, and we don't have to switch mid.
We know when the open
is.
Holy fuck.
They'll change it.
Yeah.
MisfitAthletics.com, TeamMisfit.com, SugarWOD Marketplace. And as always, I am at Misfit Coach on Instagram. Slide into those DMs. Let us know who you would like us to have on or what topic you want us to cover. And we'll see you in 2 weeks.
Cheers.